Hello and welcome to this video. Thank you so much for all of you that replied with questions for us. I'm always super interested to hear the questions, the interest, the things you want to know about, and I'm always super excited to share as much and what I can with you guys. So, without further ado, I'm going to run through the questions that you posted and see if I can give you some good, interesting answers. First question from Till0397. How do you manage to put head cap grommets on a racket? It's so difficult. You're right, it is really difficult. It's a bit of a pain. However, a little trick that you can try is take a heat gun and just heat the grommets up ever so slightly on the backside. It's just going to make you able to kind of move them a little bit more. They're going to be that little bit more kind of malleable. However, be careful not to overheat them, because if you overheat them, you're obviously going to ruin the plastic, because it is just plastic. So just heat them gently. You can use obviously a heat gun. If you don't have a heat gun, perhaps try with a hairdryer and just heat them up gently, and that should stretch them. And then make sure you have a nice, good awl. Like a thin, strong awl is also key, because that really helps getting the all the little grommets into the holes. So with that, you should be able to get them on that little bit easier. From _Nicholas Cage, what is the material / technology composition of a pro stock racket, i.e. the PT113B, etc.? This is probably something I could do a whole video on. I might do a long kind of video on this at some point. However, just to run over it quickly, this theory that pro stock is somehow better or different than regular retail racket is not really true. Different in some cases, yes, but it's not necessarily better. They're not using special metals from the moon, special kind of technologies that that you're not able to that they don't sell. So pro stock is generally nearly always rackets that have been available, and then players are playing with them and they just don't want to change to the newer models. They are the same rackets that you could buy, but then now they're discontinued for whatever reason. So they've changed technologies and so forth, and they're using the older models. In some cases, for example, head, they do slightly different layups, slightly different things, but the materials aren't necessarily better. They're just, if, for example, the PT113B, for those of you that don't know, is the racket that Novak uses. And when you've won 20 Grand Slams, you earn the right to play with whatever you want, that they make you whatever you wish. But for us kind of mere mortals, if you can't find a retail racket that suits your game, then perhaps it's not the racket's fault. Maybe you should be looking elsewhere. This notion that pro stock is better, you have to play with pro stock if you're good, it's not true. It's not made with anything special. Often it's made here in Europe for players that are here in Europe. It's just easier accessible, easy to send out to players. And then, like I said, some of them are older models, but they're the same ones that you could buy for some years ago. So I'll do a longer video on it at some point where I kind of go into more detail on things. But yeah, pro stock doesn't necessarily mean better. It just is different, a little bit different, but it's not better. Next question, J Prevos 424. What difference would you say make a pro level stringer versus a great stringer? Really good question. So the main key difference for me is the consistency across many restrings, consistency across every day, being able to take any restring, whether it's easy, difficult, and putting out the same quality over and over again. It's not about speed, which is kind of a misconception that a fast stringer is a good stringer. A fast stringer is not necessarily a good stringer. A fast stringer is a consistent stringer, someone that can just, especially in tournament like scenarios, somebody that can stand at a machine, string 10, 15, 20, 25 rackets, 30 rackets, and the quality is the same all the way through. The thing we don't want is somebody that can string, the first 3 in 12 minutes, really good, and then by the 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th racket, then the quality starts to drop, and that's exactly what you don't want from a string team. You'd rather have somebody that is, obviously we don't want slow stringers, you shouldn't be taking half an hour. However, if you take 18 minutes or so, then it's not a problem, as long as you can keep your quality and your consistency throughout every time you string. That's what makes a really great stringer. And the only way, as long as you have your right technique, so you've learned the correct technique, then it's just about experience and stringing more and more and more. Different rackets, different tensions, different strings, everything, but trying to keep, your technique the same and then giving out a great restring every time. From B Herrick 2000, can you clear a retail matte paint job to become glossy? Yes, we can. We've done it a couple times for some blades, where obviously the retail model is that matte. It's a bit of a process because even though we're not given a brand new paint job, we have to carefully remove the matte coating and then apply a kind of that clear gloss coating to it. But however, if we don't remove enough, then it doesn't finish very nicely because they don't stick. And if we remove too much, we start to take away from the paint. So it's actually a little bit tricky, but it can be done. We have done it before. Your personal racket specs, it looks very fast on a swing. Yeah, I used to play very heavy when I was competing and playing and stuff. I was playing like 332 grams, I think, unstrung. Whereas now I'm not playing as much. I'm not in the same shape that I used to be. So I'm happy with, I think my rackets now are 316 grams, 31.2 balance, and a swing weight of, if I'm correct, I think 310 or 315. So they're quite, I would say, regular specs, although maybe the balance is a little bit more in the handle, perhaps, than normal. That's also because I have a one-handed backhand. However, I've always had quite sort of fast acceleration, so I've always been able to kind of accelerate quite quickly with any racket. Ever thought about, sorry, from Hanon_Mark, ever thought about doing stringing / customizing workshop? Yes, we have. And it was actually on the back of that idea that we started with these courses, because obviously nowadays we can't travel as much, we can't get out and about and kind of meet as easily. So I decided to start creating these courses because it's a way that I can kind of still share the information and knowledge with you guys, but you guys can be anywhere in the world, take your time with it, learn as much or as little as you want from it. Whereas the workshop, there's a lot more logistical planning going into it. There's a lot, it's also a lot more expensive than, taking an online course. You need flights, accommodation, you need, in entrance, you need to eat while, so it's like a 2-3 day thing, and it's, it's a whole big thing. Whereas if it's just, online courses work great, especially in the current, situation that we're all in, that you can just, sign up, log in, do the work and take out as much information as you like, and you can rewatch it over and over again. It's something I have thought about. When things become a little bit easier again, then perhaps we will we'll revisit it and maybe think about doing some kind of workshop. So you never know. Question from Mr. Jack Horror. What's the rarest racket you ever held in your hand? Question, I mean, rarest in terms of not that many of them. Perhaps the Novak Djokovic, the black and gold Speed, one of his personal ones, because obviously he wasn't using that for such a long time and it's quite a special paint job, so perhaps that. However, the two rackets that kind of stand out the most to me that we have here on the wall is Rafa signed racket, so that's kind of cool, and also Marat Safin racket. I used to be a big Marat Safin fan back in the day, so it's kind of a bit nostalgic, I guess, and it's just a cool frame, his Prestige mid. It's for me, it's probably my favorite one. From here we go, Bruno Martini. When trying a new racket, should you customize it to your usual specifications? Depends a little bit on who you are, what you're trying a new racket for. Are you trying it just because you want to try something new? Are you trying it because you're a pro player? I would say initially, no. So perhaps go and have a hit with it first, try the racket out first, see if you like it just to start with. And if you do like it, then it is definitely worth, trying to get specs at least as close to what you're used to as possible. But in the first hit, because, you're going to get a sensation for it on the first couple of hits. And then if you feel like, okay, this could be a good racket for me, then yes, then you should go ahead and kind of get it as close as you can. However, you don't, if you're going to try 4, 5, 6 different frames out from different brands, don't spend hours modifying them, making them all, exactly, to the specs that you're used to. Because also bear in mind, when you switch rackets, you might also need to switch your specs, which is something that people kind of forget sometimes. So, if you switch to a racket that's more powerful, you may have to then reduce the balance, you may have to increase the swing, whatever it might be. But just bear that in mind when you choose a new racket. You may have to adapt your specs a little bit to the new frame. Then we have Smith 7571. What is your go-to poly? It depends, like always, on the player, age, ability. Sort of the range that I kind of like the most at the moment is the Lynx, whether it's just the normal Lynx or the Lynx Tour. I like them both because I think for their price point, they're very good strings. They're not overly expensive. The Lynx is great. It's a little bit softer than your kind of average poly, which I think is good, especially for kind of young juniors. I think it's a really good string. And also for slightly older players, you know, that don't want super stiff strings for their arm and so forth. I think normal Lynx is great. And then I really like Lynx Tour. It's what I play with normally. It holds the tension really well. It holds the ball on the strings really well. It's not as stiff as 4G. So those are kind of the two strings that I kind of, I would call my go-to strings. But like always, it does depend on the player. From M.Chalak, how do I find my preferred string and tension? Well, my first sort of piece of advice would be to don't try too many strings to start with. Start with just a couple of strings. Give yourself an idea of the things. Assess what you think you need, whether it's more control, more power, more sort of feeling, more spin, whatever it might be. First of all, assess what it is that you think you need. And then when you have an idea for what it is that you need, then it's a little bit easier to go out and find 3 or 4 strings that you can give a go to. And then again, when you're trying new strings, bear in mind that you might need to adjust the tensions of those strings. So, you know, you might always have played with 23 kilos. However, if you're going to a string that is very, very stiff, you may have to lower that. If you're going to a string that is quite dynamic, you may have to increase that. Especially, you know, if you might try gut, you might try synthetic in the cross, whatever it might be, bear in mind, be adaptive. And I would also say don't over try things. Don't try hundreds of different strings, 100 different tensions, because too much information is normally not good. More is not always better. So keep it narrow. Find, you know, maybe try 3, maybe 4 strings. Be like, okay, I like the feel of this one, and then try 2 or 3 different tensions, and then kind of narrow in. But definitely start with strings and then work your way into which tension you need for that new string. I think that's it. Yeah. So that was a nice quick video, nice quick sort of fire through questions. I'm always interested to hear, like I said, what you guys are thinking, questions you might have, and so forth. So I'll try and make this kind of a weekly thing where you guys can fire off some questions for me, and I will try my best to answer them as quickly as possible. If there is something you want to see as well, anything else from our channel, I'm going to start uploading videos every week to our YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe, turn on your post notifications, like the video, because it really does make a difference. It does help. And that will enable me to give you more content, and just let me know what you want to see in the comments, and I will see you again next time.